I've just seen a tweet from Liz Truss, actually. She's called Robert Jenrick a Trojan horse. That's a take I hadn't considered yet. There we go. Anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, listen, this is a really interesting story, and I wanted to bring it to you tonight because I was baffled when I was reading it. New revelations show the UK government was linked to secret Cold War radiation experiments on cancer patients and civilians, which has been kept hidden from the public for over 50 years. The Defence Ministry documents reveal officials discuss these tests in Whitehall meetings, sparking calls for accountability from campaigners and veterans. Well, I'm now joined by the journalist of this piece and author, Susie Boniface. Susie, thank you so much for joining me. Can you give us some insights to what you've learnt writing this piece?
Well, this is the kind of stuff like you said, if anyone were to suggest that there is, a shadowy international committee conducting experiments on civilians, a lot of people would talk conspiracies, a lot of people would say it's the stuff of Hollywood, and I was quite shocked to find that something like that does actually exist. Now, this is called the Technical Cooperation Programme. It was set up in 1957 when Britain exploded its first hydrogen weapon, and that was when our special relationship with America was restored following double agents and so on and Soviet spies. And we set up this programme to share defence research with our allies. Now, that kind of makes sense on a practical level. If you're building a new tank, you need to know you've got the best kind of tank and that you can share tanks and all the rest of it. But one of the subcommittees of this technical cooperation programme, codenamed N5, was engaged in checking for radiation effects on civilians. And the reason for that was because they wanted to know what would happen to troops in the event of a nuclear attack. Again, that kind of makes sense. And we all know that cancer patients can have radiotherapy. But this was not that. These were poor, mostly black, mostly uneducated American civilians who had no option but to take whatever treatment the doctors were suggesting they have. And the treatment the doctors were suggesting was not standard cancer radiotherapy, even for the day. So my story, one of the ladies I wrote about was called Geneva Snow. She was 42 years old. She was diagnosed with cervical cancer. Now, if that happened today or at the time, you'd usually have a bit of radiotherapy on your cervix. It's very carefully targeted because they don't want to get radiation across your whole body. Geneva was asked to curl up on her side in a fetal position as though she were a soldier on a battlefield and exposed to the equivalent of 15,000 chest x-rays in a few minutes. Then she was injected with nitrogen mustard, kind of a trial chemotherapy drug, I suppose you could call it, and it caused her skin to blister. Her daughter, Joyce, told me that she had legs that looked like chopped meat. She died soon after and obviously was in agonising pain. And Geneva was just one of 90 civilians that this was done on. The doctors who set it up in America at the time, in the 50s and 60s, said, this has a little of the Buchenwald touch about it. Are we sure we want to do it? I remember this is at a point where we had prosecuted the Nazi monsters of the Holocaust. We had established the Nuremberg Code, which had been accepted into medical ethics worldwide. And then after all that, America was conducting these experiments. Now, that kind of came out as a huge scandal in the 90s in America that they had done this to civilians, and people got paid off and it went quiet. No one ever thought anybody else was involved. Well, I found a series of documents hidden behind national security at the Atomic Weapons Establishment, which is part of the MOD that deals with our nuclear weapons, in which they had this committee meeting in Whitehall with British military who were receiving the results of these deeply unethical and horrific experiments, and basically requesting more information. There were senior RAF, Royal Navy and Army personnel present, British medics and scientists, all saying, well, this is interesting. How did you do that? How did this work? Can we have some more information on this, please? We'd like to know how troops react in this situation. And these cancer patients who were being severely irradiated included twins, they included children, they included 80-year-olds, they included people who didn't actually have cancer at all, were misdiagnosed. And they were being given psychological tests at the same time to see how they reacted to the stress of what they were being put under. Now, that in itself is just kind of horrific, that Britain knew about this, said nothing, when the scandal broke, said nothing, and also seems to have directed or had a hand in, somehow, influenced perhaps further experiments.
There's nothing more important than keeping your money and your identity safe online. And with so many VPN options available, choosing the right one can be pretty daunting. But this video's sponsor, ExpressVPN, is making the choice easier for GB News viewers. ExpressVPN is offering up to 75% off, plus 4 extra months free. That's top-level security from just £2.49 a month, and you're covered by their 30-day money-back guarantee. So just click the link in this video's description or scan the QR code now. Remember, when you're online, you are often sharing personal data, so hackers can steal your information, your passwords, your photos, and your bank details in just seconds. But ExpressVPN encrypts your connection, making it virtually impossible for hackers to access your personal information. So why choose ExpressVPN? Well, it couldn't be easier to use. With just one click, you are protected. And ExpressVPN uses military-grade AES 256 encryption, which is the same standard trusted by the US government to guard their classified information. With their new tiered plans, you can protect up to 14 devices at once and manage passwords securely. Live chat support is available 24/7, and it typically connects you in under a minute with a real person. Click the link in this video's description or scan the QR code to get up to 75% off ExpressVPN, plus 4 months extra for free. Start protecting yourself today with ExpressVPN.
Where I found this at the Atomic Weapons Establishment was on a database that relates to our own troops. It was built in 2007 by the Ministry of Defence, and it was for information relating to British servicemen. Now, I read through these papers, huge numbers of them, no mention of British veterans at all. So I spoke to the MOD and said, why is this on the veterans database? Because it's about something else. And they said, we don't know. We're checking. And then through a series of Freedom of Information requests, I managed to establish that this technical cooperation program, which these days includes America, Australia, Canada, New Zealand and us, holds information about the effect of radiation on our veterans, which effectively means they've got data, scientific data, about how radiation affects our troops. Now, I've been writing for 20 years for the Mirror on an issue about nuclear veterans, and GB News has reported on it several times as well, who were campaigning for justice and the truth from the MOD. And so there we had it. We had not only the MOD being involved in or knowing about, being linked to these horrible radiation tests on civilians, but that same committee of slightly shadowy, strange, international government organisation had also gathering data somehow on our troops. The troops who have been told for 70 years they were never exposed to radiation. So now we're trying to find out, what is this data? Where is it exactly? And all they will say is that the data on our troops is held by an allied nation.
Well, I don't think it doesn't take a rocket scientist in that respect to kind of guess who it might be, Susie. The consequences, just incredible work, Susie, what you're doing here. It really is. This is incredible journalism. But what are the consequences here? If we have to dig a bit deeper, the British government, have they made any statement about this whatsoever? What more do we expect to be revealed whilst you, I'm sure, will keep digging?
Well, a year ago, when Labour took power, they launched a special internal inquiry at the MOD looking into some of my reporting into what's become known as the nuked blood scandal, which is a series of orders for blood tests to be taken from our troops, which were subsequently, the results of which were not found in their medical records. That's a civil offence. It's a big issue legally. And it's also the opposite of what the MOD have told courts repeatedly. They've told the High Court, Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court, there was no blood testing. If there was a blood testing programme, that's effectively an experiment on our troops. So this review has been going on for a year, and it's due to report back. We're waiting for the results of that review. We were promised it before Christmas. We still don't have it. I suspect what's happened is that I know the review is complete and I know the report has been written. And I suspect what's happened is that it has not gone to the Prime Minister's desk yet because the government lawyers are looking for a way out of what they have found. And I'm told what they've found is exactly what I've already reported, that there was a mass programme of blood testing. It did involve our troops. The data is somehow lost, not to be found, somewhere they don't want to find it. And they're talking about how they can resolve that. When that happens, hopefully we will have campaigners and veterans and I will have a meeting with the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, which was promised last September. And then we will, put some of this stuff to him, because the review that they've done has only looked at a tiny, narrow part of the internal Ministry of Defence archive. And we've said all along, no, you have to look wider than this.
Well, Susie,
I'm sorry to important down as well.
I'm sorry to interrupt you because we're running out of time, unfortunately, but I just want to say this is incredible work. Please come back to us when you have more. We'd love to have you back on the show to talk about this topic. Veterans in our country, I think, are an exceptionally important group of people that we constantly look over, and this is possibly a massive national scandal waiting to happen. I'm sure the government would deny that, but we'll wait and look forward to reading some of your pieces. Susie Boniface there, thank you so much, journalist and author, into this. What, conspiracy theorists will dream of this sort of stuff, wouldn't they? And people will say they're crazy, but are they? That's a big question. What do you think at home? An MOD source confirms the contents of the N5 document were being taken seriously, but further examination was needed to provide accurate context. A spokesman said this: officials have been commissioned to look seriously into unresolved questions regarding veterans' medical records as a priority, and this is now underway. The work will be comprehensive and enable us to better understand what information the department holds in relation to the medical testing of service personnel who took part in the UK nuclear weapons tests. No comment was made about the MOD's knowledge of the US experiments. GB News has also contacted the US Department of Defence.